Audio, Mark! Go to your room! Hint for what we're talking about on the podcast today.
Welcome back to the Subject Matter.
You do the intro. No.
I'm your host.
No, let's do it. I want to see what... See, do it.
I didn't.
No.
I'm just...
Do the intro.
No, we're not changing it up.
Yeah, we are. I want to see how you
See
do
how
it.
good of a listener you are.
He probably doesn't even remember it. That's why he's not doing it.
So welcome back to the Subject Matter. I'm your host, Stephen Jenkins, here with your co-host, Mr. Jonathan Dayton. And then he continues on from there.
Yeah, what does he say after that? That's the question. What
And our
happens after that?
Special
Nobody
guest.
really knows. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Subject Matter. I'm your host, Stephen Jenkins, here with your co-host, Mr. Jonathan Dayton, and special guest. No, you don't have a special guest, technically. But you're not special, but you're junior host, Addie Dayton. We decided. Junior host, Addie Dayton. Doesn't make any sense, but we're going with it. And then after that, I would say we are experts in nothing, here to give you our thoughts and opinions on all of it. This topic we're going to talk about today might be the topic that we are least qualified in. Just for the record.
Oh, continue. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm just going to point out that he's playing with sound panels.
I ain't playing sound panels.
I
I play them every week.
Ignore the sound panels. You have something that there was a cow, like a toy cow here.
There was a toy
that you
cow
were playing
here.
with last week, I noticed. Before that, you got the duster.
It's almost like he's a child.
I am a
Right.
child. I'm a
Right.
child.
Segue. Okay, so we're talking today about parenting and our viewpoints on parenting from people who are not parents. So this was kind of your suggestion, Addie, so I'm going to let you kick off the podcast talking about parenting from your perspective, someone who is not a parent.
Okay.
What are the questions? Because we decided this topic like 5 minutes
We need
before
questions to
recording.
answer.
So we need questions to answer.
Okay, let's see. We can start it out simple.
It's super controversial by the end.
We could. I'm so excited. As long as me and Jonathan are on the same page, that'd be helpful.
Is it wrong to tase your child? Answer, jury's out. Continue.
Okay. Are you one that thinks punishment would be best for your child or a reward system? And why?
That's starting out simple. That's a simple question.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Punishment. By far.
Okay.
Some sort of punishment. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be stand in the corner. It can be timeout. It can be... I went through a lot of different forms of punishment growing up. I feel like I turned out to be a good child. There also was a reward system too. Like if you did something good and you would behave, you did get something. I think every parent bribes their child at Walmart. Hey, if you behave, I'll get you a $5 toy. But this is too much. That's too.
I got a sticker.
That is too broad of a question because
It is.
I'm going
It
to
is.
now. I'm going
Okay.
into psychology
When it's broad, you're gonna do
and
this.
Pavlov
Okay,
and
fine.
bells and
Your
dogs.
child did not clean their room when they were supposed to, and you've told them 3 times.
Punishment. No
Punishment.
No cell phone.
Right. Yeah. So again, broad question, because generally just based on your broad question,
Yeah.
I would say depends on the child. Some children respond better to do this and you get a reward. Some children respond better to you don't do this and you get punished. From my perspective, something that they're supposed to do is something they're supposed to do. If it's their responsibility to do it, they shouldn't get a reward for just meeting the quota, I guess.
Oh, that's good.
If you're at a job, right, if you go above and beyond, you get rewarded for it. If you do something wrong, you get reprimanded or whatever. Obviously, that's a little bit different because there's a salary involved, but...
I like how you mentioned like responsibility. If it's your responsibility to clean your room, then there doesn't necessarily have to be a reward attached to it. Also, there could be chore money too. Like you can get an allowance.
Right.
It's part of a reward system. But
So there's a question.
the punishment would be if you don't clean your room, you don't get the money. So it's also a punishment and a reward at the exact same time.
I agree. Now here's a question. Did either of you two have an actual allowance when you were growing up? And by allowance, I specifically mean you got money every week or every 2 weeks from your parents just for existing.
No.
Just for existing?
Yeah.
No.
Some kids have that. They have an
Spoiled.
actual allowance. Yeah, and my family never did that. We were, if we wanted to earn money, we had to earn
Matching
money.
socks, 50 cents a match.
We had to do chores. We had to
Yes.
help with fire. We lived on a mountain. We had to help with fire. We had to do, that type
Fire.
of thing.
Burn
Help
down the
with
mountain.
fire. Burn down
Help
the
with firewood.
Firewood. Not that we got paid for that every single time, but sometimes it would.
I didn't have an allowance for existing. I did, of course, have money for doing chores. I also had money put in a savings account, so when I get older, I did have money when I was
What
in high
happened to
school.
all that?
I still have it. Part of it. I mean, and the account's still open. I mean, it wasn't like I'm gonna retire a rich
He
amount of
wasn't.
A
money.
moolah
He
account?
wasn't earning a living.
Yeah, it was a very small amount of money put in that account for me for existing.
Pause. Can you stop here? Because it's gonna.
Oh, my boot.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll
knock it off.
Child.
Time out.
My feet this way. Okay.
Maybe
I
we'll
can
keep
hear.
that in there because
If you're quiet, we'll buy you a drink.
Okay.
If you're not quiet, then
So
we'll
Gonna
just stay in
start.
I
the
have a
corner.
slightly less broad question
Okay.
to
I'm
continue the kickoff. What is, because I think we've all dealt with children, whether it, well, obviously we're not
I deal with one
parents, but
every single day.
we, fair enough. But obviously you and I taught kids, karate. Obviously she was a school teacher, so we understand a little bit about being in charge of kids, at least for a short period of time. So my question for you guys is, what is one of your favorite tricks to get kids to listen? Specific, and I'll give you a situation.
Eyes on who?
That's a good one. That's a thing we used at karate, just a quick focus anchor of like, okay, eyes on who, and then they would say eyes on you, and then that would just kind of focus them on us. So that's a good one. They're not that's in that is it within the example I was going to give of kids not being quiet when they're supposed to be quiet. One of my parents' favorite ones was, hey, let's play the Don't Break the Sugar Bowl game, which was you see how long you can be quiet for.
Yeah.
Which obviously as a kid you don't realize you're just being quiet. Sometimes that backfires when they just say, no, I don't want to play it, or they think it's funny to break the Sugar Bowl. Anything for you?
We do like the bubble gum. So you give each kid a pretend piece of bubble gum, and then they get to chew it and blow it, and then they have to just keep it in their mouth.
Okay.
And they find that hard to do, and then they can't talk.
Okay. What about the situation where, and I think you already did yours for the last situation. So what about one where a child is like throwing a tantrum?
Pepper spray.
Okay. For me, it's a taser, as I said before, Addie.
Okay, I'm the realistic one with a heart. So I am saying you,
Duct tape.
no, you have to figure out why that child is throwing a tantrum. So I feel like adults, we throw tantrums for no real reason because we're just jerks sometimes. But I feel like as a kid, they really do have a reason, whether we think it's real or not. So I would just literally just talk with the kid, and they're much more than coming at them, yelling at them, or bringing with a taser. I have found if you just sit and talk, finding their main cause, even if it's not realistic and you have to tell them okay, that's not what's really happening, but
Okay.
you're able to
How
calm
do you
them.
get them to actually go and talk with you?
Most of the
though,
time, it's
before
just
that?
getting down on their level. If they're
Okay.
literally throwing a fit and I hop down on the floor and pretend to throw a fit with them, they realize, wow, we both look like lunatics.
Okay.
Let's talk this out.
Okay.
I agree.
I've never encountered a child that could just be calmed down by getting down to their level. At least not.
Well, I would
Most
say getting down is I throw it back in their face.
Okay.
If you're gonna do it, I'll do the exact same thing, and then you're not gonna like it, and I know you're not gonna like it, and so then you should just.
So in other words, somebody's throwing then you start throwing a tantrum with that. Okay.
You cry, he cries. It's real
That
fun.
I've seen my mother use on infants, and they're just screaming. Obviously, they're not really misbehaving because they're
Yeah.
infants, but they're just screaming for no reason, crying, and then I've seen her just to see what happens, just scream back at them, and they go.
And I think
and
it
then
affects
stops, and
age,
then they
too.
laugh.
Or
I think we have to think about the age.
Or just ignore them. Most children throw a fit because they want some sort of attention, whether that is they need something, they want something, that whatever that may be. If you completely ignore them, then there's no reason for them to cry, and eventually they're going to get upset.
Sure. And for the record, I want every parent that's watching this to comment on this and tell us how wrong we are, because that's what we're
for here.
Also,
We
I'm
have
learning
no
me and
idea
Jonathan
what
have
we're talking
very
about.
different parenting techniques,
But-
and this is terrifying.
Okay, all right.
This-
Well, then
we should have done this before we got married, Steven.
Great, so we're gonna continue this. Anyway,
Just because I say that, I mean, that doesn't mean I'm going to do it.
Okay, because if our child cries one day and then you scream at them, I'm going to scream at you.
I'm not going to scream at them,
Okay.
but if it depends how old they are. If they're 5 years old and they're screaming because they dropped a French fry on the floor
I still do that.
for 3 hours straight, then we have a problem. Now, if he is screaming because he fell and he twisted his ankle going on 5 flights of 5 steps, there's a huge difference in what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
She also doesn't like it when I throw stuff back in her face either.
No, because it's me. Is this marriage talk or parenting talk?
But
this is
the-
just me deciding how much of this I'm gonna cut out. Continue.
But there's a difference between being mean and then showing them what they're doing wrong.
You can't just. I don't think Jonathan's just gonna sit there and scream for 5 minutes. So
Okay,
maybe
and
go
I don't
once, see
think
if
we
it
have to
works.
sugarcoat. There needs to be some discipline. But how you discipline and the way you go about it is where
I stood in the corner a lot.
and that's fine. Corners is fine with me.
Corner didn't work for me because, usually I was in trouble for not
Ooh.
doing something.
Here's a question.
And just getting in the corner is
Did,
just me not doing
did
something.
anyone ever get officially grounded where your parents called it you were grounded?
Yes.
See, they would call it that, but maybe once or twice, but it was never like grounded as in you're not allowed to leave or go somewhere. It was always like, okay, you can't watch your TV show.
Like I never was grounded as a child. Like,
Yeah.
When my mother said Jonathan Michael, or my dad said Jonathan Michael, and I had to go sit in the tan chair in the living room for 25 minutes and do nothing, that was the extent of my discipline.
Yeah.
I've never.
It was rarely ever. I think maybe 2 times in my entire life was it ever called a
I
grounding.
feel like I turned off it just fine.
I got grounded all the
You
time.
got grounded all the time.
Real grounded. Like, don't leave your house. You can't hang out, go to games.
I mean, like by the time I was old enough to drive myself, I don't think I was doing something worthy of a major grounding at that point.
Grounding.
Anyway,
Ooh, what about soap in your mouth if you cussed?
So
I had soap.
Yep, I had soap.
I never cussed. So
Wow. I always said,
actually,
what
correction. So this is okay. So this is a mini rant. Actually, fun fact. I never cussed. I cussed one time when I didn't know what a word was.
What
I
was
just
it?
I said the D word. So the
What
very
beavers make?
the mild very mild D word.
Okay.
And
Beaver
I
D.
said it when I was
The mild D word.
Beaver
in
D.
my head. I just made it up. I probably heard it somewhere, and but I was home with my dad playing Mario Kart, and he beat me, and I just said it, and he was like, "Steven, where'd you hear that?" And I just said, "Oh, I just made it up." And he's like, "Okay, well, we're not gonna say that." And he told me it was a bad word. And what's funny though, and this is my rant, okay? My sister overheard my parents talking with me, like just making sure nobody around me was cussing around me or anything like that, whether you consider that word a cuss or not, whatever.
Yeah.
But so she knew that I learned a bad word. And of course, she was extremely intrigued by this fact. And so she was trying to, and we found out later there was a movie that we had all been watching that had it in it. And she was trying to figure out what this word was. And she managed to figure it out. And then she just kept saying it over and over and over again to the point where then she did, in fact, get the soap in the mouth.
Ooh.
Which was, but this is my rant. For whatever reason, throughout the last 14, 15 years since that's happened, my family has gotten that mixed up because I was the first one to say it. They have mixed it up and they think that I was the one
But you
that
know
got
the
it.
truth.
But I know the truth. It was not me. It was in fact my sister.
Okay, Mr. and Miss Jenkins, get it right.
Exactly. So back really quick with the temper tantrum thing. I wanted to ask if anybody's tried this because I read this in some psychology, like Reddit.
Now you're
user
talking
thing.
my
So
speed.
probably I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I've heard that if a child is throwing a tantrum, the best thing you can do is ask them a question that has nothing to do with anything, like they're throwing a tantrum in the middle of the store or something because they couldn't get their Skittles, and you say, "Hey, what color is your shoes?"
So redirect.
So redirect, make them forget as to why they're upset. And have you ever tried that
works,
before?
yes.
Does that work?
You learn so much redirection because kids' brains really can't comprehend that, and adults.
I have a theory that would work on adults too.
It would.
You get somebody with pure road rage, and they stop the car and they're out beating on somebody's window. Hey, what color is the sky?
I mean, I
Would
wouldn't
that-
recommend trying it. Sounds like you could get shot, but it could work, or you could die.
win-win.
So, I mean, you better cut that out. Jonathan's thinking about it. I'm easy to redirect. Oh, what is your
Pigs.
favorite age group? Yeah. See? What is your favorite age group to work with? Like, if you're like, this is the ideal age,
What's the
21
cutoff?
and up.
21 and down is the cutoff.
21.
21?
I'm saying 0 to 5.
21.
0 to 5. Okay, no, wait. So we're actually, let's talk about actual children. So let's say
18 and below.
18 and below. I
18.
was assuming you would say.
Really?
Okay.
Oh, they're jerks.
By far. Just because teenagers have, like, I won't say anger issues, but attitude issues. Also, they're trying to figure out their own life. I can relate more to them because I would say mentor them more. Like, hey, you're getting ready to get to college.
Okay.
This is what I did in college. What are your aspirations for your career? That's me.
I can do that.
So
And I would enjoy that much more. Not saying that I would not enjoy hanging out or babysitting a 3-year-old. That's also okay. I babysit my nephew. None of that's bad, and I enjoy that too. But I'd rather have an adult conversation than a conversation with a 3-year-old.
So, give me an example of an actual situation. And the reason I say that is because, if you're going to quote unquote babysit, an age group, obviously the older the better because you can do more stuff.
They're more-
with them.
Okay,
they're more
you have
independent.
to have a group of 4 kids you're reading a book to.
Like
Reading
a book to in a library or I'm
Like in
reading
a
book
library setting.
In
Yeah.
a library
Okay,
setting.
so you have a book and you're reading to 4 kids.
Okay.
And you
I
want
would
them to
say-
enjoy the book.
I would say, 7 to 10 range because they're not so old that I'm going to feel awkward reading a book to them,
Okay.
for one thing. And they're old enough to sit still and listen.
I'd say 10.
Also, 7 to 10 is where, you got age 4, which is usually when you become self-aware. At least that's what I've read.
I
and
know,
then
he
I
really
think
sounds like the books.
The 7 to 10 range is where that self-awareness, starts to be slightly more thoughtful. So as far as just in general, what age groups, it's hard because, I have I said 2. I have like 6 little cousins and
Obviously,
nieces
2 are
and
his
nephews.
favorite, but it's fine.
No, I'm just I'm stuck in 2018. But anyway, so obviously that's interacting with them is much different than teaching like at a karate class or something like
When
that.
it's family, there's a connection there. That's
Obviously family too, but it's sometimes easier to entertain the smaller they are because they just find pretty much anything funny. And you find the one
They
thing,
do.
for me anyway, you find the one thing that's making them laugh, and then you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't stop being funny.
No, I feel like they laugh even more every time.
The younger they are, the fewest things they've discovered, and so you can teach a child rock, paper, scissors, and then they can play that for hours.
Yeah.
Whereas you have to be a little bit more creative the older you get. But the older the child gets, the less they rely on you to entertain,
more
and they can
capable.
kind of take part of that responsibility of entertaining themselves as well.
That's. What about nature over nurture?
So
I know my strong
I
belief
have
on that one.
I have heard this argument, and I have an argument, I believe, but I always forget which one is which. So explain the nature
Okay.
versus nurture.
So nature, that's like what you're born into.
Okay.
Like nature. Nurture is like
Genetics.
what you're raised. So I 100% would say nurture. Not from my own experience, but watching how Jonathan grew up.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, he's adopted, if you don't know. And he is the, 50-50 of his adoptive mom and dad. Like, everything he does, I've heard his mom or dad do. And so, I see that that's how he was raised. It's not his blood, but he's 100% them,
Yeah.
and no one will ever tell me anything
even
otherwise.
if I wanted to say nature, which I don't, but even if I wanted to, I don't have any argument because I'm not the right person to argue that.
Okay. I would say I'd say it's probably 95% nature, or sorry, 95% nurture, 5% nature, because there are some genetical things
That's true. Some things are
that do
hereditary.
occur just because of who your biological parents are. But I think definitely
And
most
I
of it
think
is
if you were
nurture.
to poll people, I think you get a 50-50 split because I think there's examples out there of people like twins that have been separated at birth that have the same exact characteristics 25 years later when they finally meet up again.
That would be
Sure.
so cool to have
And
one
then
here.
also there's people that are adopted that act just like their parents. So I think there's examples of both. So
Sure.
I know what science is going to tell you. However, I truly think it could be either. In my
science would say nature.
Nature.
Yeah.
Nature. Okay.
but in my instance, I would say that it would be nurture. But I could see where I think it should be more split than what science tells us.
I'd say in my experience, it's mostly been nurture. But I think realistically, you're going to find examples of both. I think if you have because there are some personalities that are just, and I know that how you're raised also kind of helps cultivate your personality to an extent. But there are some personalities that are just kind of steadfast and they're really not going to change
Yeah.
based on the world around them. You know what I mean? So I think that in that particular sense, that can be in the nature specific
Absolutely.
category. But likewise, to your point, there have been twins who have been separated, live completely different lives, and have ended up completely different as a result. So I don't think that it's a one-to-one.
No,
it
I
wouldn't be
think
one-to-one.
each person has its own answer.
And it also depends on how different those particular living situations are, because it's not just one living situation versus the other. It's this one and this one and this one and combinations of all of them.
Absolutely.
But that is a good question.
What would your ideal number of children be?
So I was actually thinking about this the other night, oddly enough. I used to just naturally assume that I would always want 3 because that's what my family had. But then the more I was thinking about it, I wouldn't want more than 3 because that's just way too much. I've seen families that have more than 3, and if that works for you, that's fine. And I also thought, well, what about 2? And I think that I'd probably go with 2 just because even living in my family, 3 is a lot. Not that I don't want either of my younger siblings. I obviously do. But
One's gotta go.
they've been on the podcast.
Bye, Michael.
Bold of you to assume it's Michael. So, it's one of those things. Obviously, that would be a discussion you'd have to have with a spouse. Unless you're doing it solo, and at which point, hey, you get to
It's
choose
expensive.
that. It'd be expensive to do it solo, for sure. What about you?
2.
2?
I mean, I was the only child, so I could say 1. There's so many perks to being an only child. However, I think there's some companionship level there with having a brother or sister.
And that's
So I think 2 is fair.
That's where I'm at with it too. Just you have that companionship. You can build a sibling relationship, so you get that experience.
I think I'm too independent to have like 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah, right. Well, part of that could be the nurture of
Yeah, it could
Yeah.
be.
Because it's made a difference. I grew up with siblings. He hasn't. I need attention all the time, and he entertains himself.
And then you get into the dynamics of just being the oldest of
Yeah.
3 is different than being the older of 2.
Yeah.
Just
100%. Being the middle child makes me not want an odd number.
also what gender they are too depends because having a middle child be a girl surrounded. This is my family. The middle child be a girl, and then me and my younger brother being 2 boys. That is a much different situation than some of our other friends who have it, boy, girl, girl, or girl, boy, boy.
It makes a difference.
Makes
I'd
a
want
much
4.
big of a difference. Interestingly enough, for my family, I actually have an older sister too. She's my stepsister. She didn't grow up living with us, and so within that sort of psychological hierarchy, because she wasn't there, technically she's the older sister. Obviously, I feel like she is my older sister. But because I was the oldest of the 3 who were there consistently, then I take on the role of the oldest one in that particular circumstance. So it's interesting when you read up on that kind of thing and how it all plays out. You can predict how different personalities are going to be. I've also read, and this is I've observed this in you, Jonathan. Usually, the single children in a group of friends, if they're older than everybody else in the group, assume the oldest sibling role in that particular
He's
group.
kind of dominant.
And he just kind of takes control.
Yes.
Which is
even though he's really not the oldest in our group. I am. Even though I'm the junior.
See,
he's the tallest.
I feel that only children also they're more motivated than people that have brothers and sisters.
I don't know about that.
Then
I don't think in your case, Jonathan, that I think it worked out for you. You ended up being the most motivated, but I would say it's more likely if you're an only child to maybe end up being more motivated. But I do think I see at least one person in each sibling family, one person being the most motivated.
And I think that's how you're raised too, because I see a lot of
I agree.
single ones who have had life handed to them because they're the only child. So then when they're out on their own, they're like, crap. Where
They don't know what
Jonathan
to do.
wasn't, he had great parents, but they taught him how to do stuff on his own too.
Yeah, you, have to,
Sure.
you have to have good parents. That's definitely step one.
So we might not have given a lot of parenting advice, but we're
Well,
thanking
we
all of those
we switched about halfway through
who
to
gave
just
good
general.
parenting, because it does matter. I think that's important.
So here's a question for you who had two siblings?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're the middle?
Yes.
Okay. So here's my question, and that's nothing to do with you being the middle child, actually.
Oh.
Did the youngest one have trouble making decisions? Are they indecisive?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I feel
Her younger
like
brother's Colby, who's been on the podcast, in case
Yes.
you weren't aware.
even when he makes a decision, the sticking to it part is very like, I love him. My brother's amazing. But as the youngest child, I think he's very like, he's so used to us telling him what to do.
Exactly. And that's the exact
Because he
point I was going to get at.
No offense, but he pretty much grew up our slave. Like, we got in trouble for it. We did. We'd be like, go get us a drink. Okay. That's what he had to do.
That's not the same situation in mine. My younger brother would basically hit you if you told him to do something like that, but then he wouldn't even deny that. But no, the thing that I was gonna say was with my family, it was my younger sister, the middle child. She was just always kind of making decisions for him, like, because she was a girl, 3 years old. Actually, they were both like my younger brother was born on my sister's birthday, literally
I
on
thought
the
you were gonna say they're both girls.
Me too. And I was like, oh.
So here is essentially a live baby doll for her, and so she kind of
She played mommy.
right?
Yeah.
She just that was how it was.
You see it in all the pictures. You like hold that child
Exactly.
like.
And so, if there was ever a time when we had to go and order food, he would be the one sitting in the back seat trying to figure out what he wants,
And
just because he had no idea. He was used to just her decide, okay, this is what we're going to go play next. Okay, this is what we're going to do, that sort of thing. And then even me, to an extent, when he wanted to do, quote-unquote boy stuff,
Yeah.
then it was me that was the one that kind of decided that.
Now,
too.
because again you have siblings, so Jonathan's not really in this.
This isn't parenting at all anymore.
We're just, like,
we
into
completely
life.
got it off. This is gone to
Do
siblings
you
because it's something
think-
we actually do know.
Everyone says like there's personalities. Like my sister was always my sister was the oldest. She was like the good child, strict to the rules. Then my brother is kind of the baby, so he gets away with anything. And then there's like the middle child who's like not rebellious, but like I'm kind of gonna put you in your place in a nice way.
That's
kind of
pretty similar for me.
There's a theory. I have a theory behind the youngest child getting away with everything. It has to do with the parents.
Oh, this is an actual parenting thing. Yeah.
okay.
Because I tend to see younger children do get away with more
Sure.
or more lenient because at that point in life, this isn't how it's meant to say. I'm going to say parents don't care. That's not what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But you get where I'm going with this. But also, they're also at the same time wanting to hold on to that last one because usually it's the last one to leave the nest.
And that's
So
true.
there's more babying, but also lenience to what they're allowed to do and not do.
I think there is absolutely an aspect to that. I think that's 50-50 with the...
And
they've done this twice.
Yes.
They know what rules
Yes.
don't need to be in place.
They also learn from the first two.
And
Right.
I think the youngest learns from the older two how to get away with stuff. Because the oldest one doesn't have anyone to watch to get away with stuff. And I think my brother learned exactly what to say to push over mom and dad.
Possibly. I think if you asked my parents, I would probably be... Me or my sister would be the most well-behaved. My style of quote-unquote disobedience was always just like passive-aggressive. Whereas
see
my
that.
younger siblings were more outlandish, like tantrum style, just blatant belligerence. But again, I think there too, it also depends on those dynamics, what gender they are. Because I've heard that, all the middle child is always forgotten, right?
Yeah.
Would you, as
Yes,
the middle child,
100%.
would you agree? Okay. But in my particular family, that's not the case. And I think that's because my sister, Elizabeth, is highlighted because she's the only girl.
It does make a difference on the
It
genders.
does make a much bigger difference. If it was 3 boys, or even in your situation, 2-1.
Yeah.
But the older 2 being the same, I think in that particular situation that might change that.
And I think there's different needs too. I mean,
Yeah.
people might not agree, but like, I need you to tell me all the time how you feel about me. Like,
Okay.
even as a child, like, I
Yeah.
needed that reassurance that I'm loved. Whereas, like, my brother he could care less. Like, you know what I mean? He didn't
Yeah.
need to hear those words.
I don't know if that's I experienced that sort of just need for confirmation. I experienced that more in my adult life now than I think I did in my
Me too.
childhood
I
years, so
will
don't know
agree.
if that's-
Especially once you get married. Like, I need to know you still love me. Like, we just had 4-year anniversary, and he's still deciding if he wants to do another year. That's what he told me.
Contract renewal season. I had to consult my lawyer for the draft contract.
We learn a lot here on the subject matter, and I don't know if I'm going to cut that out or not.
No,
We'll
you
find
keep that
out.
in there, but marriage is a whole other Marriage is a whole other topic.
Of which I will not be here for when we talk about
It's not a
that.
bad thing. I just think marriage. There's stuff that we have learned as a couple that most other people that get married don't learn it the way we do.
We also have a very different
That's the reason
marriage.
Well, that's the reason why. I think we function great. I just think that because when the circumstances of our marriage, plus the amount of time that we've been together now, is just significantly different than how most couples are. It's also funny to think that most people that were in high school with us are just starting to get married now, or planning to be, or have a serious relationship. I say majority of them, not all of them.
We're not calling you out.
And we've people who didn't graduate with us.
I can graduate.
And
different.
and we're one of the only few that got married at the age that we did.
Well, you were 19, weren't you?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
20.
young.
Yeah.
So
We were young.
there's significantly different things, and so I think that there could be a topic one day to talk about marriage, because I think that there's things that we could share that would be beneficial to a lot of people. And the topic that you could be here for, it's not. I don't think there's any argumentative in there, but that.
I'm just going to come in and tell you why you're wrong on everything you've learned about
I
marriage
think
and
you
why
should.
I know so much more.
You can be the Karen.
Karen.
Karen?
The parent.
The problem with marriage topics and parenting topics is I have my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
but also I have the science and psychology that I want to spurt out and theories, but I can't because it wouldn't fit the conversation.
It's not cookie. Marriage isn't a cookie cutter. Is that what they say?
Yeah, it's not a cookie cutter situation.
Nothing's a cookie cutter, and that's when you have an exact science like psychology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's good up to a point, but then sometimes intuition and gut feeling have to kind of take over.
Yeah, but see, that's like the mix. Like, this is a conversation for more.
I was gonna say, this is great.
Theoretical conversation, and just like these questions are more for our dinner topic. We should have like a dinner podcast one night.
A dinner podcast, or we just sit here
Sit
and
and
eat
eat
dinner.
and talk. We could talk forever. But then just like a podcast topic, because I'll give you my short version of why I think parenting should be this way or marriage should be this way in a podcast. But when the cameras are off, I'm going to tell you it the same way, but I'm going to be more blunt about it and give you more theory and reason why I believe that's the case, which could be more of a debate style conversation than it is a podcast topic conversation.
Yes.
That's what my major in college was psychology, and so children's psychology and things like that. That's going to be part of my reasoning, whereas you two, I don't think had. Did you have child psych?
I had to, yeah. Early education, you need child psych.
If intro to sociology counts, then that's about it for me.
So yeah, child psych and clinical psych and social. So my mind's thinking about those theories and reasons that I want to spread out details as to why I think I'm right, which is also part of my personality of proving that I'm right.
Right.
Only child syndrome.
That's a you and I are both in the same
Yeah.
category there. That
Steven and I both like
we like to be right.
which works well for our podcast. But,
Not for a friendship. Just
it
kidding.
works well for a friendship too.
Just kidding.
Because the topics
We manage.
the topics that we're most interested in
Just like
are
marriage.
different. Like if it's a movie topic, he's gonna be right every single time. I don't watch them. If it's something that's related to the fire
Science.
department and science,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be right. If it's something in the middle, then we can agree to disagree on it, and that's okay for our friendship. We don't argue about it.
Which
But
is how it should work.
But we both,
World.
it's how the world should work. But that's also, I mean,
Hashtag be
Just a-
kind.
just our personalities trying to prove our point while we're right. Where Addie's more submissive and doesn't care about necessarily always being right.
I'm used to being wrong.
Unless there's times where she can be very argumentative.
If I have a passion about it, you're right. I will take you down.
Yeah. But you have to have a passion
You'll
about
try.
Oh no, I will.
it. There's got to be a passion about that. But see, here's the marriage part again. You can have passion about something, but you also have the facts to back that up. If you're just passionate about a topic and there's no evidence there whatsoever to support your claim, then I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Wait, what does that have to do
agree.
with marriage?
But
You just mean
something
when we fight?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right? See,
I
if
follow.
you get passionate about a lot of things, and that's great, and so do I, but before I speak my mind on anything, I have to have at least a singular fact to back that up, to support that
And
claim.
sometimes mine's just emotions.
Yes. Addie's is sometimes just purely on emotion, but I do the same thing too, so I'm not saying that I'm
And you
not
can't
that way.
always rely on purely. Well, I say you
There's a
can't
mix-
always rely
there's a mix
purely
of
on
both.
fact, but it's a mix. You can't rely on as it seems because sometimes things aren't always as they seem. You have to go
Yeah.
with your gut feeling on that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
You
that's-
should be a
I'm-
marriage
So
counselor,
some
Steven.
intuition needs
Next
to be there.
episode is just going to be marriage counseling. So if you are in a
That's a great idea.
in a new
Really?
marriage, a failing marriage, or in whatever the heck this is, you guys can come on the podcast and I'll give you all my marriage tips of which I have zero experience from. Thank you guys for listening. This has been I want to say it's been slightly more serious than our last few, but also not
I
at all.
like this.
Me too. I thought
we
this
need more to
flew-
this.
flowed.
This is like good conversation that like we can dig deep in and really get deep. Like this could be like a 4-parter theoretically because there's so much more that we can get into.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm not even sure that our cameras are still recording. So if you're looking at whichever angle
That one's
here,
off for sure.
if you're listening through just the microphone, we apologize. We went on for a little bit longer than I was trying to, but I think it turned out okay. So
Yeah.
thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. Let us know all of your parenting fun in the comment section, and we'll see you next time. And what was their new sign off? Not the.
If you're a counselor and you want to sponsor the next
He's still
episode,
going.
sponsor the next
we'd love to have you on the show. If you need some counseling
we
help
know
and
nothing.
assistance, it is free. We are not licensed.
Not licensed at all.
It's just purely conversational advice.
I'll hug you.
All insurances are accepted because we can't accept insurance either.
the matter of the subject. That was the thing from last week,
Yeah.
I think, right?
There we go.
Yeah, it's a matter of the subject.
Okay.
I forget what it
We're
was.
gonna sign off now.